felt pressured by society's expectation of men. Pretty much, most definitely.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think that's hard to escape.
I have an instinct of what I want to do, but then I definitely feel that expectation of just what I should do.
It's almost like sometimes in situations that you get put into, people expect you to act a certain way because you're a male. I feel like I've had that quite a bit, especially me coming from a half Japanese point of view. They really try and push a man as a man, and a man can't complain, he can't whine.
There's a lot of things that, especially as younger boys, we're told that is kind of normal or abnormal for us to do, and that's definitely shaped me and all of my friends to who they are today.
Yes, I have, definitely.
In certain situations, yeah. I would say probably yes.
I think for me personally, it played a big role in my life.
I think in some situations, a lot of the time it's nearly like a survival instinct that you're in a certain situation that you often feel really uncomfortable in, and you have to put on that sort of mask to fit in.
I kind of guess, like a lot of boys, just started doing it unconsciously.
You know, just to make yourself feel comfortable, but also to make them feel comfortable in a sense.
If I were to have not put on that persona, I would have felt like people would not have accepted me because I wouldn't have been strong enough.
I just don't think it works for me. No one would take me seriously. I couldn't take myself seriously.
I don't think so.
No, never.
Can't even remember. Which probably means no.
Not enough, I don't think.
Recently, I think I found a few men that I do speak about that with, and it does feel so great to be able to finally find someone to speak to, you know, even your feelings and just the whole topic.
I think a lot of guys tend to feel criticized a lot, and kind of like, whoa, what are you doing? Toxic masculinity, why are you trying to attack me? That kind of thing. And so there's a lot of conversations around it. Some of them are probably a little more articulate than others. But yeah, for me, I discuss it a lot. It's kind of like a real big area of interest for me, just because I grew up without a father. So the whole masculine idea of what it means to be a man has been a big weight on my mind.
I guess probably subconsciously I would have been.
I really struggled to express vulnerability when I was young.
Especially for boys growing up, it's all about, you know, like acting somewhat tough and being the man. There's an example of when I was, you know, in year 6 or 7, might have actually even been year 5, and I kind of set myself this goal of like, oh, I'm not gonna cry for a whole week, and then I'll never cry again because I've stopped myself from crying.
Men are really scared to do a lot of these things, and I don't think it's really realized just quite how petrifying it is as a man. Even though there's no explicit social institutions or media depictions going, hey, men don't cry, like that's not really there anymore. We don't have John Wayne anymore, but it's still, I don't know if it's a social thing or a biological thing, but there is a resistance there.
It's just such small things as you grow up can solidify this idea of who you're meant to be. Like in the playground and the banter between kids on, oh, you're a girl because you feel this.
My dad was quite sensitive and he was in touch with his emotions. I frequently saw him crying, or he was always like crying in movies. And you know, as a kid, and like you never see a male cry. I remember this one time he was like watching the Field of Dreams, and he was just like crying so much, and I was like, why, you shouldn't be crying, it's just a movie. And then he's like explained that like the movie reminded of him and his dad, and that he missed his dad, and then he told me it was like fine to cry. And it's crazy that like I was so young, like maybe like 5 or 6 years old, but it's strange like that. I really remember that quite vividly.
Even if my family is so accepting to that, and I can see it in the older men and the older generations, that they're coming to accept that we should talk about our feelings, but it's still so hard for us because I don't know, there's just this over-looming pressure of just, you shouldn't, like, I don't know, you should hold this facade that you're a strong man. I think there are resources there for men to talk about their feelings and it to be accepted, but it's the initial start and the initial push to actually make it okay. Like that's what is missing.
You can put a helpline or a 1-800 line for boys' mental health, or you can put a student counselor in school or whatever, but if no one calls or no one goes there in the first place, then it doesn't matter.
Like I could talk to all my mates about toxic masculinity, but I probably won't because it just feels weird to talk about it, I guess.
There's a shame attached to it, almost.
I think men are in desperate need of help and resources. And it's a tricky thing. I actually get quite a bit of blowback when I say that, because it's like, well, you're men, you don't face the same sexism or race. Well, I'm a white man, so racism or any of these things that more marginalized communities kind of face. And so to say, men need help, or we need a men's movement, or we need something like that, often is seen to be flying in the face of feminism or whatever's going on, anti-racism. And my idea is that these kind of things can exist simultaneously. You can have a men's movement without compromising, the efforts of feminism. There are a lot of troubles facing young men and men in general in modern society, like the suicide rate, for instance, is astronomically higher for men. Substance abuse, obviously violence and incarceration is like across the board. Men are doing worse in school now. The trend is decreasing. Like there's so many things. Men are actually struggling quite a lot, but it's not particularly fashionable, I don't think, to talk about it, the risk of generalizing, but that's just been my experience.
Yes, I do think that men reserve their feminine, emotional, sensitive side for the women in their life. I think that quite a few men that have female friends tend to use them as a sort of therapy, as a sort of person that they can talk to about their feelings, and then as soon as the boys come around, it's straight face, everything's okay.
I think most of us do. I think that's why it can be such a relief to have like women as friends.
Men act differently around women to men acting around boys.
Yep. Can 100% say that I am a lot more feminine around my girlfriend than I am around my boy friends.
I'm much more comfortable around my women friends talking about emotional stuff than I am around my male friends. And there's a couple of male friends in particular that I do feel comfortable with, but it is kind of around that vulnerability thing again. It's difficult to be vulnerable when there is that masculine or those toxic masculinity traits.
Between the boys themselves, like unless you're really close to someone, no one really ever talks about if they're going through anything. Like the most you say, like, you good? Yeah, I'm good, I'm fine.
I find a lot of times when I try and speak seriously with my male friends that it's often taken as a joke, because a lot of the times we are just joking around, a lot of it is just banter. So when someone does say something serious, it often throws people off and they don't really know how to cope with these sort of feelings, like man to man.
I don't think men do support men enough.
No. Probably not.
No.
Yeah, probably not, honestly.
Men in general don't support men enough.
In business, probably a bit too much.
I think men wish they could support men more, but they don't have the tools to be able to. There's not that many men that I know of that are really willing to go out of their own comfort zone to support other men, and it's such a big leap, and it's so uncomfortable for so many people to explore, because it is, you're quite vulnerable when something like that, you're in that sort of situation.
I don't think it's a thing of men not wanting to support other men. It's more just, we don't know how.
And a lot of times it's also declined when someone tries to support you. You're kind of like, no, it's okay, I don't really need it.
I think a lot of it needs to come from men. It's just one of those things, you know, it's like, again, the same thing as guys expressing their femininity with their girlfriend. That's one thing, but expressing it in a more general setting, I think a lot of that needs to come from men.
I think addressing how unnecessary a lot of the toxic actions are, and just addressing that they're not necessary. It's not essential to having that sort of social reputation, and I think once we address that, we can then realize that there's other things that we can do that aren't obviously toxic, that are also masculine.
I think boys, for one, if you're having a conversation with a boy, like another guy, don't just make everything into a joke. That's usually what a lot of friend groups are based upon, like humour, and humour is important, but at some point you need to just hear what the other person is saying and actually give them just a mature response.
Say, hey, how you doing? You okay?
Just giving them the option to talk.
Make sure your friends are okay, make sure your brothers, your dads, grandfathers. Making a point to support when a certain man in your life has done something that is emotionally healthy.
Dear men, I know it's hard to find the strength or reason to make yourself vulnerable. I know our minds get in the way and the facade we cling to seems to give us strength.
But please be confident that when you choose the challenging path of softening and becoming more vulnerable, that you are being courageous.
Traditionally, we see masculinity as being strong and brave. We should redefine these traits and use them more broadly.
The key thing that I have learned is to start small.
Organise to talk to your fellow men.
Let's take away the stigma of being vulnerable around other guy friends.
Just start some dialogue with the guys.
If they're checking on you, tell them what's up.
Chances are, if you're struggling, they could be struggling too.
Be you, be brave, stay true.
Don't underestimate the impact of your change as an individual.
Don't let society's expectations define who you are as a person.
Take time to love.
What's true is what comes from within.
We all feel pain, and sometimes we all feel lonely. But know you have my support, even if you don't know me.